our fire extinguisher webinar, and we're welcoming Sharon back, who had given us a amazing presentation a few months back on smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms. So really excited to have her present to us about fire extinguishers. She's made this presentation specifically for us. And so I can't wait to see what she has for us. Please do not hesitate to ask questions. We have a Q&A. I'll also be monitoring that as well. So you can submit questions in there as well as the chat. So with that, I'll hand it off to Sharon. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And while I share my screen, I would just like to reiterate, this is meant to be a conversation. So please feel free to ask a question. If you don't know the answer, there's a great chance that a lot of other people don't as well. So please do not hesitate to ask questions. All right. So Selena, can you see my screen? Just wanted to make sure.
Yes. Yes.
Great. Thank you. Xander is in the background, my puppy, who's quite rambunctious. So you might hear him. My apologies, everyone. He's having a moment, a puppy moment. All right. So welcome to Fire Extinguishers, the Basics by Kidde. Kidde, for those of you who see the Carrier logo, Kidde is proudly a Carrier company. So you will see a mix of Kidde and Carrier throughout this presentation. I just wanted to let everyone know that in advance. So I just, again, want to start with the basics. So what is fire? Fire is basically an exothermic chemical reaction. And that means that energy is released in the form of heat and light as a byproduct of a chemical reaction. Fire is a chemical chain reaction. And the thing that I really want everyone to take away from this slide is that fire creates more fire. So that's why fire extinguishers are very important, because fire extinguishers help to extinguish that fire and stop the spread. As far as fire goes, I often tell people, here are the things that fire needs. So fire needs three things: fuel, heat, and oxygen. So the combination of those creates what we call the fire square. Now, the goal here is to remove one of those three elements to stop the fire square. So if one of the elements is removed from the fire situation, the fire will be extinguished. And again, I am just putting this in this presentation to let everyone know why fire extinguishers are so important. The purpose of a fire extinguisher is to remove at least one of those components of the fire square. All right, as far as fire extinguishers go, from a residential and commercial application, there are four basic design principles. And I'm going to just dive right into the most common types that you see in residential applications. So the first type is a portable or a disposable fire extinguisher. That means that this is a fire extinguisher that's good for one use only. When you use it, you will need to replace it. This is the most common type in residences. We believe around 80% of all residential fire extinguishers, or the fire extinguishers that are in your home, are portable or disposable. The other type is rechargeable. So you see these oftentimes in buildings and maybe your office. Some homes are equipped with them. A rechargeable means that it needs to be serviced by a professional. They recharge the fire extinguisher with the chemicals or the agents inside that help to extinguish a fire. And then the last type is an aerosol spray can. We do not recommend those aerosol spray cans. Now, I know that they're becoming popular, and that you see more and more of them on the shelves and at retail, but we do not recommend them. And here's why. There's, well, a few problems with them. Number one, they're not UL rated. So most don't carry those codes that are required, right, in our residences. UL spends a lot of time testing and assuring everyone that their fire extinguishers will work. And without that rating, well, we're just not sure that they will, extinguish a fire when you need them to. Number two, some states like California have restricted sales of these, again, because they do not carry the UL classifications and ratings and other agency approvals. So if you're in California and you have one of these, please reconsider it. Number three, there's no pressure indicator on the aerosol spray can. So those pressure indicators are there to let you know that your fire extinguisher is ready to go, that it's ready to use. That's what that gauge is on every fire extinguisher. It's really a pressure indicator. And so without that, you really don't know if it's ready to use until you hit the button. And most often that's in time of an emergency. So we want to make sure that you know that your extinguisher works. And they have a shorter shelf life than your average fire extinguisher. So those aerosol spray cans are about 3 years to 6 years, as opposed to the 10 to 12 for the other fire extinguishers. So again, a much shorter shelf life that require more routine replacement, right, over the life of them. And often there's some confusion with the labeling. So most of the cans are labeled with, they're not intended to replace an NFPA compliant fire extinguisher, but that can easily be overlooked. So here's a few concerns. In fact, we're so concerned about it that the Consumer Reports actually came out with an article stating that they have applied a do not buy, not recommended, poor performance failure issues with these aerosol spray cans. So I really encourage everyone to read up on this, to look up this article from Consumer Reports, again, a trusted consumer advocacy group who also recommends purchasing the standard NFPA and UL compliant fire extinguishers. So now I will get off of that. And let's talk about rechargeable versus disposable. So we get this question all the time. How do I know what I have in my house? Well, here are a couple of tips. Number one, you can look at the packaging. So oftentimes the packaging will say rechargeable or disposable or one-time use. That should be clearly indicated on the packaging. If you don't have the packaging anymore, let's say you moved into a house and the fire extinguisher was already there, you can look at the user guide. You can, grab the model number from the fire extinguisher and you can Google it. What did we do before Google? Anyway, so you can Google it, and your manufacturer should have some very clear specifications on their website to tell you whether it's rechargeable and needs servicing or it's disposable. When you're buying, you can also filter when you're searching. I put a box here that says extinguisher features. You can select rechargeable or disposable. And last but not least, again, going back to the manufacturer's instructions. On the instructions, you might see a word like replace your fire extinguisher. That is a really clear indicator that you have a disposable fire extinguisher. All right, so let's just jump into the basics. You guys let me know if you have any questions. All right, so let's talk about when to use a home fire extinguishers. This is a really common misperception. I talk to people a lot about this because it's really, really important. So a fire extinguisher for the home is designed for two main purposes. Number one is to put out a very small fire, maybe the size of your fist, because we know that fire can double in size every 30 seconds We want you to put that fire out as quickly as possible before it starts to grow. And that means in the beginning stages. So please do not tackle a large fire with a fire extinguisher in your home, because we want you to get out as quickly as possible and let the professionals do it. The second time to use a fire extinguisher is when you are trying to escape from a burning building. They're a great tool for helping to clear a path. Let's say that, the path is blocked by fire. Use the fire extinguisher to temporarily put those flames out while you are escaping. This is so important that I'm going to repeat it again. The fire extinguishers, the disposable kind that you might have in your house, are designed for two purposes. Number one, a small fire the size of your fist. Number two, to help create a path out of a burning building. Having a fire extinguisher in your hand is not like you see on TV and the movies. You are not a professional firefighter. You do not have minutes worth of extinguishing agent in that can. You have seconds. Depending on the size of the extinguisher, you have between 3 to 10 seconds, not minutes, seconds of powder. So use it with a lot of caution, and when you know that successfully using the extinguisher will work for your purposes. Now, if you are in doubt, you get out. You get out of that building and then call 911. Any questions here before I move on? Drop it in the chat. All right, so I'm going to move on to agent types and fire classification. So fire extinguishers come with a lot of different fire extinguishing agent types. The most common type is dry chemical for us. So, and then different classifications as well. I'm going to dive into that a little bit deeper, but I wanted you guys to have the overarching picture. As far as testing, the agencies test fire extinguishers routinely to make sure that they will work under the classifications that they have assigned. You can see here, for instance, Class A fire testing involves a wood crib and a wood panel. So there, again, are a lot of agencies paying a lot of attention to fire extinguishers to make sure that they work as promised. Now, let's talk about the agents. So again, I get a lot of questions about this. What does ABC mean? So here we go. I'm going to walk you through it because this is such a critical piece of fire extinguishers. So Class A means that the agent in that fire extinguisher could put out common combustibles. I often think of this as like trash. So it's stuff like wood and paper and cloth and textiles and fabrics and plastic and rubber, etc. So kind of like a common trash or common combustible. B puts out flammable liquids and gases like gasoline, propane, heptane, and etc. And C puts out electrical equipment fires like those from computers or cell phones or something along that line, electrical fires. Now, you'll often hear an ABC rated extinguisher. That is a multi-purpose or general purpose fire extinguisher, A, B, C rated. That is really the gold standard for common living areas in your home. So A, B, C. So now you know what that means. So A is like wood and paper, B is like gasoline and flammable liquids, and C is electrical. So ABC. All right, so also we strongly recommend that you have a K class or 711A rated extinguisher in your home for cooking, right? Because we know that about half of all fires start right there in the kitchen. Half of all home fires start in the kitchen. So having a fire extinguisher in the kitchen really makes sense, especially if you can put a fire out before it gets big. So that's what Class K is, I say, well, it's a kitchen, class K. And then there's another one called D, and that's for metal fires. It's not very common. What I'll say is A, B, C, and K should be in your home. A, B, C, and K. All right, so you heard me say before ABC. So, and then you'll hear me say again 2A10BC later, or 1A10BC as you see here. So what does all of that mean? It's not, they're not random numbers. They really do mean something. So on the left, 1A. So class A rating. So that A means 1A is equivalent to 1.25 gallons of water. So that's what that means. So a 2A would be 1.25 times 2, or 250. I hope that makes sense. On the class B, the B rating is equivalent to the square footage of flammable liquids that the unit can extinguish. So 10 BC would be 10 square feet. And class C just indicates that it has components in it that are good for electrical fires. So 1A, 10 BC. Now we understand what all of those ratings mean. All right, and then here's just a slide about the standards as a whole. Kidde, carrier follow NFPA. They are the guiding authority. I'm sure everyone on this call is familiar with the NFPA. The NFPA 10 puts forth standards for commercial applications, and it makes recommendations for residential applications. The NFPA 10 generally recommends a 2A10 BC, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Other standards when you're purchasing or looking for a fire extinguisher would be federal codes, NFPA standards, your building codes, your state, county, city, and local codes, and then other authorities having jurisdiction. So if you ever have a question, always turn to your local fire service because they will be able to answer that question, because codes do vary from state to state, city to city. So just make sure that you're in alignment with what your local fire department wants you to have. All right, so let's talk about the rooms, because this is the absolute top question I get from consumers all the time. Where do I put a fire extinguisher? I've broken it out for you here. All right, so in your living room, we want you to have a 2A10 BC. This is recommended by the NFPA. So one on every level of the home, no more than 40 feet apart. So if you have a 2-story home, you should have at least 2A10 BC fire extinguishers in your home. All right, as far as a bedroom, we recommend that you have one there too. Why? Because about half of all fires happen in the traditional sleeping hours. So I'm sure you want to have a fire extinguisher in your bedroom in case something happens and you need to escape. So consider one in your bedroom. We recommend one in your garage or your workshop. It's a little bit bigger recommendation for your garage and workshop, really due to the volume of flammable liquids. I mean, I keep a whole bunch of stuff like paint and other things in my garage. So we recommend a much larger fire extinguisher, a 3A40BC, in the garage and workshop to handle that amount of liquid. And then in the kitchen, again, we've talked about it, highly recommend a K or 711A rated fire extinguisher in the kitchen to help extinguish those fires that just occur in the kitchen. And if you're outdoors, if you're grilling or barbecuing, we recommend a 1A10 BC fire extinguisher there. If you have a gas grill, you could get by with a BC rated fire extinguisher. But if you have a charcoal or a wood burning grill, we strongly recommend 1A10 BC fire extinguisher. Any questions up to this point?
I think there's one in the chat asked about hybrid vehicles.
We would recommend a BC rated fire extinguisher in your automobile. You got it. What a great question.
Thank you.
All right. So speaking of, I have an automobile here in my house. So this is my fake house that I made today. So let's talk about what it looks like when you install fire extinguishers in your home. So we want you again to have a 2A10BC. This is recommended by the NFPA in multiple locations in your home. So in the living room, in the bedroom, in a laundry room, and in a playroom. So you can see here is a typical house. So there would be 4 fire extinguishers that are 2A10BC. We also really, really want you to have a 711A or Class K rated. I'll use those interchangeably. Fire extinguisher in the kitchen. And I'm going to just stop here and talk about the kitchen for a second since we're here. When you are cooking, we want you to keep your fire extinguisher behind you as you're cooking. We do not want you to put your fire extinguisher under the kitchen sink. Please do not put your fire extinguisher under the kitchen sink. A lot of people want to, and we're really trying to help bust that myth. And here's the reason why you shouldn't put your fire extinguisher under the kitchen sink. It's because if the unthinkable happens and a fire breaks out, panic sets in. And I don't know if you're like me, but I keep a whole bunch of other chemicals underneath the kitchen sink. So in a panic, you might accidentally reach under and grab the Windex and start spraying a flammable liquid on an active fire. And that flammable liquid will actually make the fire grow. So please don't store it under the kitchen sink. We also are asking you not to put your fire extinguisher next to your stove or your countertop or in the cabinet next to the range. And there's a reason why. If a fire breaks out on your stove, we do not want you to have to reach over the fire to grab the very thing that you need to put the fire out. So keep it behind you as you are cooking. Just a couple of feet behind you is very important. A couple of feet so that you can turn around and easily grab that extinguisher and turn around and spray. And I'm going to talk in a minute about how to put out a grease fire because it's such an important topic. It truly is. They require special handling, but I just wanted to really dive into why we strongly recommend kitchen fire extinguishers and where to put them. Because I've seen myself, it breaks my heart, a lot of images out there where the extinguisher's under the kitchen sink or it's next to the stove, and that's absolutely not great placement. So please let us know if you have any questions. And Selena, if you let me know if any questions are coming in, that would be awesome too. I can't see the chat right now. All right. Let's look at the garage. We've talked about it a little bit. So 3A40 BC in the garage area, and the automobile, especially when you have those electric cars, we recommend a 10 BC be stored in your automobile. And last but not least, bringing up the rear is that grilling and outdoor living. We would love for you to have at the ready a 1A10 BC for fire pits, outdoor grilling, barbecuing, those types of outdoor activities. So you can see here, the house is now covered with wonderful fire extinguishers. They're ready to go in case something happens and you need them. This is a great representative model of what the house covered should look like with fire extinguishers. All right, so I promised grease fires, and here it is. So grease fires require special handling. Grease fires can easily spread. So you can imagine if you throw something on it and it erupts, that grease, that's active fire, can actually spread onto your countertops and your cabinets and make the fire grow faster and more furious than a traditional fire. And that's why they require special handling. Do not move a grease fire. It's really instinct to move a grease fire off of that burner, but do not fight that instinct. Do not move a grease fire, again, because it requires special handling, and that grease can easily spread onto other things and catch them on fire as well. So do not move a grease fire. And also never, ever throw water on a grease fire. The water acts as an accelerant for that grease fire, and again can make it grow at a much exponential rate than you would see otherwise. So no water and no moving, right? The goal with a grease fire is to smother the fire. So I get all these questions all the time about, well, can I throw salt on it, or can I, here's what we're going to tell you is that the goal is to smother the fire. Now, if you can do that through a lid, great. Remember how we talked earlier about the 3 components of the fire, right? And oxygen was one of them. So if you can deprive that fire of oxygen, then that's great. That will work with a very small grease fire. So if you have a pan that caught on fire and you have the lid and you can safely, without burning yourself, put that lid on, that's fine. That's great. The goal is to smother it. Now, if you don't have all of that available, or you're just not sure, we want you to use a fire extinguisher to put it out. Again, I'm going to go with the K or 711A rated extinguishers because they are specially designed to put out grease fires. You can, if you have an ABC or even a BC rated extinguisher, use that. We really recommend 711A, which is a special designation for grease fires. Now, when you are using your fire extinguisher on a grease fire, it again requires a little bit of special handling. We want you to stand back from the fire 6 or 8 feet or so. And why? Because the force of the powder onto the fire extinguisher can actually cause some splashback. So we want you to be out of the line of fire, right? So stand back away from the fire. And then, and this is really important, with a grease fire, aim at the top of the fire. So you'll hear with regular fires, traditional fires, to aim the fire extinguisher at the base of the fire. But a grease fire, again, because of its nature, it can splash about, right? We don't want that to happen. So the goal is to smother the fire. So if this is a fire, you aim at the top of the fire and the powder falls down on it and smothers it. So never, ever aim a fire extinguisher at the base of a grease fire, ever, because it can actually make the situation worse. Now, if it does not go out, if the fire does not go out, get out and then call in the professionals, dial 911 and get first responders there to put that fire out for you. Now, while we're talking about kitchens and grease fires, I just want to mention that my company, Kidde, has a patented nozzle on a special kitchen fire extinguisher. It's the RESSP model. And this patented nozzle is cool because it helps you to create that arc that is necessary to put out those grease fires. So it kind of sprays in a rainbow, if you will. If you think about the shape of a rainbow, it kind of comes up and comes down so that it helps the powder to fall down on the fire and achieve its goal, and that is to smother the fire without you as the user having to worry about, am I back too far enough, or am I going to cause degrees fire to spread across my kitchen. So I have the RESST in my kitchen. Fortunately not had to use it in my home, but I have tested it and I think it's a really cool model. So I wanted to point that out because it's the only one on the market that has that.
I had a couple of questions in the chat box. First, we had somebody ask if you should keep an extinguisher by every fireplace.
That is a great question. I do. Yes, I definitely recommend having a fire extinguisher next to a fireplace, especially if it is wood burning. Absolutely. So if you are in a space like I am, that's smaller, and I have one fire extinguisher and it stays in my living room next to my fireplace. But if your home is larger and you are lucky, then yes, we would recommend one by the fireplace and then one in the common area that's accessible from living areas. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally does. And then there was just a question about the K fire extinguishers, if it works on other types of fires as well, or like so ordinary combustibles, or if it's specifically for kitchen.
You know, it's rated for oils and grease fires. It most likely would have some limited functionality, but for common combustibles, I would strongly recommend ABC.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any other questions?
That's it for now.
Yay. Okay, good. Well, y'all keep asking the questions, please. I know I get tired of hearing me talk all the time.
I'm sure you're going to go over this, but somebody just asked about getting rid of old fire extinguishers. So.
Oh, no, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Here's what I'll tell you with getting rid of old fire extinguishers is that oftentimes your local fire department will take those in, or a local fire equipment distributor in your area will take those in as well, because they are rechargeable and recyclable. So you can contact Kidde, you can contact you, Selena, you can contact your local fire department, or find a fire equipment distributor in your local area. They would love to have those, what we call in the business a can. They would love to have those cans.
Yeah, as well to keep in mind.
Sorry, hang on. There you go.
That if a fire extinguisher is still charged or has any extinguishment still in it, it's considered a household hazardous waste. So you can't just throw it away. If you were going to try to throw it away or recycle it, then they recommend to discharge it first. And then at that point, you can just recycle it as normal.
That's a great point. Thank you for that. And if you are worried about discharging it, you can go to your local FED or maybe fire department, and they can help you with that. We also say that, if you want to go outside, it's a great time to practice the pass method, the system that I will discuss in a minute about how to use your fire extinguisher. So it can be good practice as well. Any other questions?
Yeah. Can fire extinguishers be stored outside the home, such as the patio near the gas grill?
No. They depends on the climate, but 99% of cases, no. Fire extinguishers have an optimal operating temperature that they need to be stored in. So and I'm going to talk about it here, when you go outside to grill, we want you to take one with you, just like you would with all of your other prep materials. But no, we do not want them to be stored outside. That's a great question. Thank you for asking it.
That's all we have for now. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. You're awesome. Okay. So let's talk about grilling for a minute, because it's almost grilling season in the rest of the country. So it's probably already in California, it sounds like. But hashtag climate envy. But so here we go. Gas grills were involved in an average of 8,900 home fires per year. the CPSC and NFPA tell us. And charcoal or other solid fueled grills were involved in 1,300 home fires every year. So you can see that these pose a real fire hazard. So we want to make sure that every person knows what they need to do when they are grilling. And most of that is to make sure that your grill is properly placed. It's 10 feet from the exterior of the house, generally speaking, and to make sure that you have a fire extinguisher with you. So we were so concerned about this that we ran a survey with the Harris poll, and we found out that 58% of grill owners did not know, or they weren't sure if they knew, how to use the pass system. So pass system is pull the pin, aim at the fire. In a traditional fire, it's the base of the fire. In a grease fire, it's the top of the fire. Spray and sweep, right? So pass. So 58%, that's over half of all grill owners did not know how to use a fire extinguisher. So you want to make sure to change that. 90% of grill owners fortunately said that they own a fire extinguisher, which is great. But 59% didn't keep one within reach when they were grilling. So again, we want to make sure that if you have a grill or a barbecue outdoors, that when you go out to cook that fantastic meal, that just like you do with the rest of your prep tools, you take a fire extinguisher with you, right? Make sure that everybody stays safe. And then last but not least, nearly half, 44% of grill owners did not know that disposable fire extinguishers need to be replaced every 12 years. So if you don't know that, I'm going to tell you right now again. So disposable fire extinguishers need to be replaced every 12 years. Now, if you don't know how old your fire extinguisher is, or you just can't remember when you bought it, or you inherited one, there is a simple tip. So on the bottom of most every fire extinguisher, I'm holding one here. See, here's a fire extinguisher. On the bottom of the can, there's a date stamped into the can. So this one says 2017. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but it says 2017. So in 12 years, so 2017 plus 12, that's when it's time for me to replace the fire extinguisher, even if the needle is still in the green on the gauge. So every 12 years, check the bottom of the can for the date of manufacture. Did you guys know that? Did you know that tip about the bottom of the fire extinguisher? Let me know. Okay. And then here on the right, just some grilling statistics from our friends at the NFPA. As you can see, there a lot of home fires unfortunately occur from barbecuing and grilling outdoors. So again, that really supports the need to make sure that you have a fire extinguisher ready when you are outside cooking that lovely meal. All right. So here's my little cheat sheet, some tips with do nots. These are do nots with fire extinguishers. So here's the number 2 most common question about fire extinguishers. When I get my fire extinguisher, do I remove that tag, that little yellow or white tag that is on the fire extinguisher when I pull it out of the box? And the answer is no. So you can see here, if you can see my video, I have a fire extinguisher and it still has the yellow tag on it. That yellow tag is a safety seal or a tamper seal. So that tag really makes sure that the pin in the fire extinguisher stays in place. That pin, by the way, is there to prevent the handles from engaging and the fire extinguisher from discharging. When the handles engage, the fire extinguisher will release. It will spray some powder or agent out. that pin is preventing that from happening. And that yellow tag is keeping the pin in place. I swear it's all a master design. And that is to keep you safe and have this fire extinguisher ready to roll when you need it to be there and ready to go. So let me know if you have any questions around the tags. So do not remove the tag. Please keep the tag in place. All right. Also, we've talked about this a little bit already, but it's so important. Do not store your kitchen fire extinguisher under the kitchen sink. We've already talked about the panic. We've already talked about other flammable liquids are under there. It's just not a great place to store your fire extinguishers. If anybody tells you to put it there, tell them to call me. All right. And then do not store your kitchen fire extinguisher next to your range or cooktop. We've talked about that. We don't want you to reach over the fire to grab the thing that you need to put the fire out. We want you to stay safe. So keep it behind you as you're cooking, within a couple of feet. All right. Do not store your fire extinguisher in an uncontrolled climate. We talked about that. Please don't keep it outside. Make sure that it stays somewhere where you know that you can regulate the temperature, because again, fire extinguishers have optimal operating temperatures. And do not store your fire extinguisher next to a direct heat source. And so an example of that for me is, so I have my grill outside, right? And I prop my fire extinguisher right up next to the hot grill so that the fire extinguisher starts to heat up. We do not want that to happen at all. So keep it away from a direct heat source so that it can't heat up the tube. All right, then do not let a fire get between you and a fire extinguisher. A fire extinguisher is your best friend in case of a fire and you need to escape. So make sure that you have one close by, right? So that really goes back to all those placements I talked about. We want to make sure if the unthinkable happens and a fire occurs in your home, that you can get to a fire extinguisher to help you get out. Or if you have a small fire, that you can get to one quickly, because again, we know a fire can double in size every 30 seconds, right? So that's a really short time frame. So make sure that you have a fire extinguisher handy. You can never have enough fire extinguishers in your home. If you came into my house, you would laugh, because I have one about every 10 feet, honestly. But so again, you can't ever have enough fire extinguishers. All right. And then do not buy a fire extinguisher that you cannot easily manage, like one that's too heavy. So the general rule for fire extinguishers is buy the biggest one that you can manage. Because if you buy a 15 or a 20-pound fire extinguisher and you can't lift it to use it in case of an emergency, that extinguisher is not going to be helpful. We want to make sure that you buy the biggest one that you can use. So always, like my mother, who's 85, would not be able to manage this big behemoth that I have next to me. I told you guys I have fire extinguishers everywhere. This behemoth that I have next to me. So I would recommend that she, has a small one like this one. So again, it's up to personal preference, but we want to make sure that size matters, buy the biggest one that you can manage. And then do not purchase extinguishers that are not UL or agency rated. So any questions here?
Somebody asked that given the not outdoors issue, what about fire extinguishers in vehicles when it drops below freezing outside or when it's parked in the sun? What are your recommendations?
No, that's a great question. Hopefully that you have the Automotive rated fire extinguishers. So those are designed to withstand some of that, the weather and the heat in the trunk and all of that. So if you'll send me an email, I'll walk you through it in more detail. How about that? But that's a great question. I strongly recommend you look for ones that are rated for automotive for your vehicle.
What about pounding on the bottom of fire extinguishers? We've had people say, well, if you just grab it and shake it, you know, every once in a while for maintenance. And I mean, and that's, I hate to throw our firefighters under the bus, but I've had to correct a few of them a couple of times for giving the advice for fire extinguisher maintenance.
Oh, so yeah, we don't recommend that.
Yeah, I want to, let me, whoops. Speakers, are you speakers?
Hold on.
Turn your speakers off. Are your speakers off? Yeah. Can you hear me okay now, Sharon?
I can.
Good. Yeah, no, in fact, we a few years ago went and called a bunch of people, and Kidde was one of them. And I forget who it was that finally told us, they said, listen, you find one manufacturer who has in their instructions, yeah, you're supposed to pound on your fire extinguisher. Said, no. If it's UL listed, then it's guaranteed it's going to liquefy as soon as you get that thing going. And out comes the powder. You're more likely to damage it by pounding on it. And that was something back in the old days before they had the modern chemical structures and stuff. Yeah, you used to have to do that to keep it from compacting, but a modern extinguisher, absolutely not. So is that, we're giving good advice now? Good. I've had to correct some extinguisher technicians on this. Like, and tell them, call a manufacturer, man.
High five. Yeah, we don't, you know why?
Whoop, now I can't hear you.
Oh,
That's because you have your sound.
can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I will turn my sound on.
So I'll tell you
My
that
sound
you're
is off. I'm sorry. I
No.
am so.
Just mute and then I'll turn mine on.
Where did mine go? There it is. Yay. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you just fine. There is a question that was posed. Vic asked if we could discuss propane fires. I don't know if there's something specific we wanted to talk about pertaining to propane fires. Not sure.
Yeah, anything specific to it or just in general?
It says general, but maybe Vic will have
Okay.
something more specific.
So we would just point back to the BC rating. So with gas grills, especially, like I'll just point, that's one of the more common applications for that. We would just point back to the BC rating, and typically propane, it's, you know, you deal with it the same way you would with a traditional fire. So grease fires require that special handling from the bottom, but propane, you're just trying to extinguish in a traditional way. I hope that answers your question.
Vic, if you have additional questions, we've allowed you to speak if you would like.
Can you hear me now? It's Vic.
Yes.
Hey, Vic,
Hi, Sharon. So
how you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. It's very, very helpful.
Good.
Somewhere I thought in CERT training, we learned about smothering a propane fire. Am I mistaken? Is that, I was wondering about that versus the fire extinguisher. Because there actually was a demonstration, you just put like a blanket over it, and there's a good chance you can just smother it out. Is there any recommendation with respect to whether you can do that?
Yeah, you know what? I don't have that recommendation. Here's what I can tell you. It makes sense if you heard that in your CERT training. It would make sense because you're trying to remove one of the three elements from a fire, right?
Which is
fuel
oxygen.
or oxygen. I mean, it would make sense. But if you're using a fire extinguisher to put out a propane fire, then we would recommend a BC rated
Okay, all right.
at a
got it.
minimum.
All
I
right,
hope that
thank you.
helps.
Thank you.
But you give me fodder to go back and ask my experts in-house about. So thank you for this excellent question.
Thank you.
Patty, if you wanted to ask a question, we've allowed you to speak if you want to take yourself off speaker.
No, was this one, when I asked about the stovetop fire?
Oh, possibly. I just saw your hand. I apologize.
Yeah, no, that was a generic one before she got into it, so I'm good.
Well, hey, Patty, what did you ask? I'll be happy to repeat because
Well,
stovetop fires are super important.
It was actually when you mentioned the size of the fire. So a fist, you said a fist. Well, I know my husband cooks with the biggest pan possible. So,
Yeah.
you know, a fire that he's going to start is probably going to be more than a fist right from the get-go.
Yeah.
So are you telling me that, you know, I should just get out of the kitchen?
I honestly would try to extinguish it first. I mean, how big a pot are we talking about? Like, to
Well, you
feed
know,
an
like a
army
12-inch
or
or like a 12-inch
Yeah.
saute pan or something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think as small as it, you know, as long as it is still small, you know, I would try to extinguish it by smothering it. If that's through the means of the lid, I've seen people put cookie sheets over fire successfully or with a fire extinguisher. But if it starts growing out of control, that's when I think Selena would tell you to get out and then dial 911. I think, you know, that's the time I would get out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're
Agree
welcome.
completely. There was a question here. Do you know anything about fire blankets?
I do not.
Yeah, I didn't.
We didn't.
I don't have any reliable information on them specifically either. So something to go back and read about.
Yeah. Me too. I love these questions. Patty, thank you for your question, by the way. Are there any other questions?
Not right now. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. All right, then I'm going to go to my do's. Here's my do list, the good list. Okay, so we've talked about this a lot already, but I'm just going to recap it here and some new bits of info too. So do have plenty of coverage throughout your home. A home can never have enough fire extinguishers. I know I said that before. I'm looking at about 3 of them right now in my house. Again, all shapes and sizes and ratings, but at a minimum, the baseline should be A, B, C rated fire extinguishers. Again, A, B, C, those are labeled at the store. They're labeled general purpose or multi-purpose or living area fire extinguishers. Those are what we at a minimum want you to have. Do store a kitchen fire extinguisher behind you as you're cooking. Again, we don't want you to reach over the fire or have to search for the fire extinguisher. We want it behind you so that you can turn around and grab it and then stand back and spray at the top of the fire. Do mount your fire extinguishers as per the instructions that come with your fire extinguisher. So I know I happen to be a person that doesn't love to read the user guides, but with life safety equipment, it's very, very important. Every model from, you know, every manufacturer and every model has, it varies. So just make sure that you become familiar with the recommendations from your manufacturer. Do regularly check the gauge on your extinguisher to make sure it is still in the green. I tell people all the time, green means good or go. So a fire extinguisher has a gauge on it. You want the needle to sit in the green. If it is not sitting in the green, it might not work. So we want you to replace it. If that needle drops out of the green, make sure to replace it. Most fire extinguishers come with a warranty. So yeah, oh yeah, you go. There you go. Vanna White over there. I love that is fantastic. I love it. So just to make sure to check your gauge. Make sure it's in the green. And then, like I was saying, so before Vanna White entered, that most fire extinguishers come with a warranty. So if you have an extinguisher that's, say, 5 years old, it's still within its lifespan, and the needle drops out of the green, call your manufacturer and see if they will replace it for you. Kidde will. I'm just saying. All right. Do inspect extinguishers every 6 months or sooner, at a minimum every 6 months. And again, you're making sure that the gauge is in the green, that the pin is still in place, the pin, and that it is still within its 10 to 12 year lifespan. So I just want to say that we did a little activity, a campaign with ABC's Good Morning America. And we did a canvas in a neighborhood in America. And we discovered that 9 out of 10 people did have a fire extinguisher, but they were from the 80s. So those fire extinguishers probably would not have worked. So check your fire extinguishers right now, please, and make sure that they are not older than 12 years. Again, this is for those disposable kind, the one-time use, not the rechargeable, but disposable fire extinguishers need to be replaced every 10 to 12 years. This, as people on this call have pointed out, these cans are full of powder and different things. So we want to make sure that, they will work when you want them to, that the mechanism that makes the extinguishers work is still pristine, and that the powder hasn't just gone out of date. So again, if you have extinguishers that are older than 10 to 12 years, please replace them. All right. And then last but not least, do familiarize yourself with the pass system that we talked about with the grilling. When we took a survey and found out that about half of those people did not know what the pass system was. So I'll do it for you. Here we go. Pass. Pull the pin. You're going to pull the pin out of the fire extinguisher. We talked about the purpose of the pin. The pin is in there to keep the two handles from connecting and causing the fire extinguisher to put out agent, right? So by pulling the pin, you are basically enabling the fire extinguisher to work. Again, you should have the safety seal still on the extinguisher. But don't worry, when you pull the pin, that safety seal will easily come off. So again, pull the pin, that's the P, aim in a traditional fire, aim at the base of the fire. If it is a grease fire, you're going to aim at the top of the fire, right? Because you don't want that grease fire spreading. So traditional fire, base, grease fire, top. All right, then you're going to squeeze the two handles together. The extinguisher will send out its powder, and then you're going to sweep side to side. So pass, pull the pin, aim, squeeze, and sweep. That is the pass system. Any questions? You guys are so awesome and engaged. I love this. I love all these questions.
Somebody asked me about Woodside Fire taking old fire extinguishers.
Oh,
and I just said, because they asked if they could take it to the fire station. And I said, we have in the past. Do keep in mind, we're going to be rebuilding one of our fire stations and remodeling another one. So 2 out of 3 fire stations are going to be getting worked on. So our space is going to be limited, but I do believe what we've done is we've taken the fire extinguishers in, and then when we have ours serviced, we give those fire extinguishers to the company that services them. So I would say go ahead and drop them by. Just be aware, if you go to the admin building that's on Portola Road where my office is, that's not a fire station. So it would then have to be transported, over to the fire station. So one less drop would be directly to the fire station.
You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome for doing that. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to get into a little bit of a Kidde and Badger overview. For those of you who don't know, Kidde puts out Kidde branded fire extinguisher and Badger branded fire extinguishers as well. So here's an overview of our line. I just left this in here so you guys could see that there are a number of different variations of models, of extinguishers that are available to you to purchase. So when you walk up to the bay, at your local store, or you're searching online, you might feel a little overwhelmed by all of the models that are available for you to purchase. So if you ever have any questions, like I have this application and I'm not sure if this is the one that I should have, feel free to contact me. I will guide you right through that process. And if I don't know the answer, I will go to one of our in-house experts who have 50 years in the business and get an answer for you. You have a direct connection into the experts. I promise you, I will help you.
Yeah, we do have
because-
somebody that's curious about the history of fire extinguishers, like when they were invented and so forth.
That's amazing. Thank you. So Walter Kidde, who was our founder, actually made the first integrated system back in the 1920s. He purchased a piece of a patent and a piece of another patent, and he made the very first fire extinguisher system. I do believe, I wasn't around back then, but I do believe that it was carbon dioxide based. But I'll be happy to dig into that and get a little bit more information for you. What I can confidently say is the first system came out in the 1920s.
Okay. I do have Patty, you can go ahead and take yourself off mute and ask your question.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry to be such a pain.
You're not a pain. You're asking a great question.
Two quick things. First of all, I want to put a plug in for the CERT training, because part of the CERT training is they actually have you shoot, what do you call it? Shoot a fire extinguisher. They actually have you pull the pin, aim, and press. And I got to tell you, there's some pressure there. So
yeah, it's a
you're
lot
gonna
of
get
kickback.
you're gonna get a little flashback or whatever they call it. So
Yeah.
don't go out in your backyard and practice. But hey, if you can sign up for the CERT training, you will get practice. And the second one is, my husband shut down a company at one point, and we ended up with all the old fire extinguishers, which I took down to one of the local companies. But be aware that because they are a controlled substance or whatever, you can only carry so
Hazardous.
many in your car.
Mm-hmm.
So
Good point.
if you got a lot of them, I don't know, but got one or two, probably not. But that's just something to think about. Anyway, that's all.
That's a good point. You are absolutely right. Fire extinguishers are classified as hazardous goods. So yes, exercise caution with them. In some states in Canada, they require special shipping method. So yeah, so again, exercise caution. That's a great point, Patty. Thank you for bringing that up.
We had somebody ask what the recommended Kidde model for the 2A10BC unit. They were having trouble finding it.
Yeah, there are so many available. I understand. So if you can Google FX, like fire extinguisher, FX210, that is a great model. FX210. Also, if you are Googling and you're shopping, I don't know, like the Home Depot, there's a twin pack at the Home Depot with the FX210 or 2A10BC and a kitchen fire extinguisher as well. That's a really good option.
I don't see any other questions as of yet. I think you've answered a lot of questions, and this again has been just wonderful information. Oh, is there a way that we can get these slides made available afterwards?
Of course.
That's
For
awesome.
you, For you, yes, 100%. And I did make this deck especially for you guys. Like this is custom for you. So absolutely.
Yeah, we just know we have a lot of emergency preparedness advocates, they're neighborhood leaders in here who probably want to share this
Aw.
information to their neighbors. And once again, you've provided so much information to us. We greatly appreciate it. If there's any other questions, please don't hesitate to ask everybody as well. Too, be aware this video is going to be on YouTube afterwards, so it'll be posted. We are live right now, so thank you to everybody who's been joining us.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, thank you guys so much. I will just mention while I'm here that we don't really encourage children to use fire extinguishers. So, it's a split ideology among parents if they want to teach their kids to use a fire extinguisher or not. Kiddes and the NFPA's kind of position is that we want children to get out as quickly as possible. We don't want them to, how do you feel, Celine? We don't want them to spend time trying to figure out how
yeah,
to use a fire
I
extinguisher.
absolutely agree. The priority is to get out and stay out. So,
Yes.
Obviously there have been those instances where children have seen extinguishers used and used them successfully, but that's, obviously if they're using it to help them get out, that's different. But we by no means we want them to get out, stay out, and then call 911 immediately.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you for agreeing with us. Yes. So, it's up to you as the parent if you want to at least familiarize children with the fire extinguisher, but we don't recommend that they be assigned to one or use one.
We also had somebody just asked you to repeat that information regarding the Home Depot special for the two fire extinguishers.
So yes, so thank you for asking. So there is what we call a twin pack. There's 2 fire extinguishers in one box. So there's a red fire extinguisher and a white fire extinguisher, and you will see it if you Google or you get on the Home Depot site and just put in Kidde fire extinguisher twin pack. You'll find it. Yeah. And if you don't, shoot me an email and I'll send you a link to it. And my email is sharon.cooksey@carrier.com. So that's SHARON.cooksey, COOKSEY @carrier.com. And if you write me, I will write you back.
She's extremely responsive. I mean, this is
You're
her
so kind.
second presentation she's done for us, just because she's amazing, and we feel so lucky to have found this resource. I was lucky enough to just be scrolling through Kidde's website and came across her name and asked if she would present to us. So we really appreciate you again popping on here, because you're so dynamic and you're just a lot of fun.
You are. Thank you for that.
That Home Depot also has your 4A 60BC extinguishers.
Wow, that's big.
That's a behemoth. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't lift that one.
Thank you, everybody. If there's no other questions, we just want to say thanks again for attending, and can't wait to see everybody on the next one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
If I could just mention one more thing. I'm so sorry about
Absolutely.
cleanup, especially, and I'm thinking about grilling and kitchen. So if you are in the position where you need to use a fire extinguisher, make sure to clean the powder up quickly, because it can cause some damage to, your cooktop and your grill, especially the grilling application. So we recommend an ADC. The A piece of that, when it's introduced to a hot metal surface, it can adhere to it and cause some corrosion in the metal. So just make sure to clean it up quickly, and look at some kitchen fire extinguishers are very caustic, very, very caustic, will corrode your metal. Ours are not that kind. Ours are designed for a very quick cleanup experience without damage to your cooktop. But read the fine print on some of the other options that are on the market. So one of my experts actually compared it to like a declogger. Like it's very caustic and acidic. So just make sure if you need to use an extinguisher that you clean that powder up very, very quickly.
Great, thank you. That's great advice. Oh, let's see if we had another. What company do you suggest to work with for commercial fire extinguishers? Oh, we do have a local one. We have Gerboth is one of our fire extinguisher companies. That's on all our tags for our fire extinguishers.
That's good. Kidde and Badger, we work with a variety of companies. So I'm going to defer to you, Selena. But we have a roster of distributors. I'm happy to introduce you to if you need.
That would
any
be great.
help.
If you pass that on, I can then put it in our YouTube description when we post the video so that people then have that information attached. That would be
I
great.
would love that. I would love, that's amazing. Also, you know, I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone right now to check their smoke alarms and their carbon monoxide alarms and make sure that they are working and that they are younger than 10 years for smoke alarms and 7 to 10 years for carbon monoxide.
Yeah, and if you
So-
did not catch her presentation, haven't watched it yet, it's on our YouTube channel, the WPV-Ready YouTube channel, and it's great. So a lot of really good information on smoke alarms and CO alarms.
You're very kind.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You. I loved this. I love working with you guys. So thank you for the time. Thank you
Yeah.
for all these great questions. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And thanks everybody else for attending. And with that, we'll call it a day. Thanks so
Yeah.
much. Everybody have a
Thanks.
great rest of your weekend.
You too. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.